Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna
Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari. Jaya Gopi Jaya Gopi Janavallabha His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Nitai, Gaura Premanande. Signing the praise of the glories of Srimad Bhagavatam. Sarva Shastra Piyusha, Sava Vedaika Satpala, Sava Siddhanta Ratnadya, Sava Laikaika Drikpada. Nectar from the ocean of all scriptures, sing the fruit of all the Vedas, rich mine of the precious gems of all conclusive truths. Give her sight to all the worlds. Sava Bhagavata Prana, Shima Bhagavata Prabhu. Shri Krishna Parivartita. Life of all the Supreme Lord's devotees, Master Shrimad Bhagavatam. You are the sun risen in the darkness of Kali, you are the exact image of Shri Krishna. Paramananda Pataya Prema Vashaksharayate Savada Savasevyaya Shri Krishnaya Namostame. Bow down to you is supremely blissful to read. Your every syllable pours down a flood of prema. You can always be served by everyone. You are Shri Krishna himself. Reko Bando Matsangin Madgura Manmahadana Madnistarga Mabhagya Mad Ananamostate. My only friend, my constant companion, my spiritual master, my great wealth, my savior, my good fortune, my source of ecstasy, I bow down to you. Asadu sadhu tadayen nati nichotata kara hanamachkara chimam prema rit kantayos I bestow a saintliness to the unsaintly, a shelter of the most high. Voice pure, my heart and my voice of pure love. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Granth Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, entitled The Status Quo, Chapter 30, Description of Adverse Fruitive Activities. Text 6. Please repeat. Atmajayaya Sutagara Pashudravina Bandushu Niruddha Mula Hridaya Atmanang Bahumanyate Atmajaya Sutagara Pashudravina Bandushu Niruddha Mula Hridaya Atmanang Bahumanyate Atmajaya Sutagara Pashudravina Bandushu Niruddha Mula Hridaya Atmanang Bahumanyate Atmajaya Sutagara Pashudravina Bandushu Niruddha Mula Hridaya Atmanam Bahumanyate Atmajaya Sutagara Pashudravina Bandushu Niruddha Mula Hridaya Atmanam Bahumanyate Atmajaya Sutagara Pashudravina Bandushu Niruddha Mula Hridaya Atmanam Bahumanyate. Please repeat the synonyms. Atma, body. Jaya, wife. Sutta, children. Agara, home. Pashu, animals. Dravina, wealth. Bandushu, in friends. Niruddha, Mula, deep rooted. Hridaya, his heart. Atmanam, himself. Bahu, highly. Manyate, he thinks. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki. Such satisfaction with one's standard of living is due to deep-rooted attraction for body, wife, home, children, animals, wealth, and friends. In such association, the conditioned soul thinks himself quite perfect. Purport. The so-called perfection of human life is a concoction. Therefore, it is said that the materialist, however materially qualified he may be, is worthless because he is hovering on the mental plane, which will drag him again to the material existence of temporary life. One who acts on the mental plane cannot get promotion to the spiritual. Such a person is always sure to glide down again to material life. In the association of so-called society, friendship, and love, the conditioned soul appears completely satisfied. Srila Prabhupada ki. Om Gana Timarandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshun Nilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadada Shiva Sadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Mukam karoti vachalam pangum langayate grim yakripatam maham bande shi gurum dinataranam. Offer my respectful obeisances unto my spiritual master, the deliverer of all fallen souls, whose mercy turns the dumb into eloquent speakers and enables the lame to cross mountains. Translation again. Such satisfaction with one's standard of living is due to deep-rooted attraction for body, wife, home, children, animals, wealth, and friends. In such association, the conditioned soul thinks himself quite perfect. So this is the onset of the chapter, a description of adverse fruitive activities. In the Vedic perspective of reality, then when one acts, he produces a fruit, something to be enjoyed in the future. It takes time to grow, flower, fructify, ripen, etc., and then it's enjoyed by the conditioned soul. And that whole understanding by advanced materialists is the karma kanda system, as it's explained in the Vedic literature. And actually, the greater portion of Vedic knowledge is actually dedicated to this, to fruitive activities. So in the word fruitive, you kind of got the word fruit there. So the idea is that your activities bear a fruit, which you, as the performer of the activity, have to enjoy. And the word enjoy in this context is a little misleading because sometimes the fruitive activity is adverse, which means the fruit isn't going to be very nice. Like you may have experienced, you get yourself a nice piece of fruit, at least it appears that way, and when you bite into it, it's rotten or highly bruised or stale on the inside. So that's what happens to us in this material world. We act and we implicate ourselves. Kama bandashu. We're bound by our acts. And what that means is that you have to get the fruit. More or less, there's no other option unless you know something about atonement, which karma kandis did know, but even that doesn't necessarily solve the problem, as pointed out at the beginning of the 6th canto by Parikshit Maharaj, when he's just heard the description of the hellish planets, which are certainly results of averse fruitive activities. Then out of compassion, he inquires from Shukadev Goswami what can be done about this situation, how to get rid of the results of adverse fruitive activities, the results that lead you to hellish existence. And at first, testing his disciple, Shukadev Goswami offers prayaschita, atonement, as a possibility, as a solution to the situation. But Parikshit Maharaj very intelligently pointed out the fault in this is that though there may be some atonement and resolving or counteracting the adverse fruitive activities, still, because the heart is not purified, then the propensity to perform the same activity that implicated you in adverse effects will be performed again by the conditioned soul. So he understood that the real solution of the problem is a heart solution, the cleansing of the heart. And Shukadev Goswami concurred. Yes, this is correct. This is correct, Parikshit Maharaj. And then he proceeds, as you know, to explain the pastime of Ajamil. Ajamila fell into adverse fruitive activities, though at first started life as a very good karmakandi, a pious man, a brahmana. But the way of this world is that it will provoke you, and it won't always provoke you, obviously, with a mode of goodness option. There are three modes of material nature, and the mode of goodness is the highest, but passionate ignorance is always competing for supremacy, as Krishna explains in the Bhagavad Gita. So though certainly the Brahmanas are situated in the mode of goodness, and they're meant to be intelligent, so they should know how to navigate in this world, at least materially, in a way that they don't involve themselves in adverse fruitive activities. Still, that Brahminical platform situated in the mode of goodness is also not steady. So by the movements of time and the influence of the modes of material nature, then even such a Paka Brahmana as Ajamil, who, as you remember, did try to use his intelligence. So we have to give him credit there. He tried to exercise his intelligence to control his mind, but he failed, and he came under the sway of passion and ignorance. And he fell into a very deplorable state of existence. And you know how the history goes. And eventually, by the grace of the holy name, he got a second chance. And he went and performed sadhana bhakti, by which his heart was purified, and by which the fruit of devotional service, the prema pala, not the karma pala, but the prema pala, was attained. And he was escorted back to the spiritual world at the culmination of the pastime by the Vishnu Dutas. So the problem is, one becomes deeply attracted. It says here, due to deep-rooted attraction for body, wife, home, children, animals, wealth, and friends. So when we act in this world, again, karma bandhashu, those acts bind us. And as Rishabhadev clearly explains in his teachings to his 100 sons, headed by Bharat Maharaj, he says, Kung sastriya mituni bhavametam tayo mito hridaya grantam ahu ato griya kshetra satapta vita janasya maho yam aham mameti. So there, as Prabhupada's translation goes, it says that the attraction between male and female is the basic principle of this material existence, which means it's also the basic principle of fruitive activity, because material existence means fruitive activity. And on the basis of this misconception, which ties together the hearts of the male and female, one becomes attracted to, as we're hearing here, his body, home, wealth, friends, relatives, and so on. And under the misconception of the bodily conception of life, one thinks in terms of I and mine, aham mameti, aham I and mameti mine. So this is the heart of the issue, that we are deeply attached to our material existence. Acting in this world implicates us, and we become totally invested in the things of this world. We become attached to the temporary. And the more we become attached to things of this world, the more we will have to lament and suffer in the future. In many ways, as we began talking about karma, the results of karmic activity. But not only that, just being attached to anything material in of itself will cause one to lament. So you could say that's one of the problems, fundamental problems of trying to be happy in the material world, because even if you're successful, that success is actually your greatest enemy. Because eventually, by the movements of time and the natural progress of anything that's caught within time, the material energy, then that will be deteriorated, that will be annihilated, and you will lament proportionately according to how strongly rooted that attraction, that attachment is. So actually, material success, being successful, is actually a great problem for the conditioned soul. Like Prabhupada explains in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 3, text 39 purport, he says that advancement of material civilization on the basis of sense gratification means increasing the duration of the material existence of the living entity. Such a beautifully eloquent sentence composed by Srila Prabhupada. Then towards the end, shortly after that, he says, basically, roughly paraphrasing, he says that although there may be some material happiness for the conditioned soul, that so-called material happiness is the greatest enemy of the sense enjoyer. It's actually an enemy. If we become attached to anything within this world, that is actually our enemy. And it's a heart issue, an attraction issue, an attachment issue. And it's deep. It's very deep. So much so that even Queen Kunti, you remember, when Krishna is departing for Dwaraka after spending some time with the Pandavas, I believe it's after the battle of Kurukshetra, and King Yudhishthira is finally being reinstated in his proper position as the emperor of the world and the king of Hastinapur. Then Krishna is departing, and Queen Kunti, as we hear in the first canto, comes before Krishna and offers these very beautiful prayers to the Lord, full of deep imports and meanings. And one of the things she says is that she prays to Krishna that her attraction to her family members, her attachment, may be severed. Now, the question may be raised, but hang on a second. Queen Kunti is a pure devotee of Krishna, and all her family members, more or less, are pure devotees of Krishna. So what's the problem with the attachment there? But what she is talking about is the material attraction for happiness through them just being her biological relatives. That's what she's talking about, which is a problem. attraction for body, wife, home, children, animals, wealth, and friends. Unless these things can be infused with bhakti that promotes our attraction to Krishna, then these things will be a problem. One of the problems with the mode of goodness, as you know, it makes one content, materially speaking. So it's the highest mode. It's the recommended mode of nature to cultivate, to be in. But one of its faults, interestingly enough, is the satisfaction, the contentment, the peace of mind that it gives, because one will become complacent. And then there may be no impetus for Atato Brahma Jigasa, inquiry about the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But as we were explaining, even for people situated within that mode, which is certainly a challenge within the age of Kali, time will rock that platform. It's not permanent. It's not secure, as we see in the case of Ajamil, and one will be degraded. So much so that you may be a very good karma kandi, a performer of fruitive activities, a very pious man or woman, but eventually you will become influenced by passion and ignorance and perform averse fruitive activities, which the Yamadutas say eventually we see everyone. So there's no security on the material platform. So the nature of this world actually is such that it's meant to give us a bit of a hard time. So we're hearing here that the so-called perfection of human life, this so-called perfection of human life is a concoction. So what that means is that the goal of human life isn't actually meant for just being happy and comfortable and satisfied materially, though that is definitely very difficult. But even if you attain it, that is actually not the goal. And so this world makes us struggle. There is always a struggle in every yuga. Don't just think it's something for the age of Kali. In every yuga, we see the struggle, prakriti starni karshati. And what is that struggle? Yarye damdaryate jagat. Because if you want to enjoy materially, then you have to control. And you're trying to control the material energy, which is Durga. And she makes things very difficult. That's her function. And that's actually, this material world is meant to be a difficult place, because the goal of human life isn't this conception of material perfection. It's something else. So she's meant to make it a hard struggle. It doesn't matter what yuga it is. Even when the avatars appear, there is a struggle. I was thinking of Parashurama, the warrior avatar of the Lord. But if we look at his life, it was difficult in some ways. In some ways, definitely, it was difficult. Imagine if you had some king's sons turn up to your place and chop your father's head off. Or imagine if you had your father give you the order to kill your own mother. So there's all sorts of difficulties, even for the avatars. What to speak of Ramachandra? Such difficulties that the Ramayana is such a, in one sense, it's a very difficult read for the soft-hearted. It's like, oh my God, how much difficulty is there? Even Ram cannot be happy, it seems, of course. There's deeper import to it. And of course, the Supreme Personality of Godhead and all his associates are enjoying the bhakti bhava. But on one level, it's a struggle. Being banished to the forest, having your wife kidnapped, getting back your wife, and then because of dharma, and banishing your wife again, and then again getting her back again, and then she disappears again. Life is difficult. Even for Krishna, it appears there is difficulty, right? He's born in a prison, and his father takes him incognito to Vrindavan, and he grows up there, and all these demons are attacking him. There is difficulty in this world. Of course, that is Leela. And then for the pure devotees also, the Pandavas, just hearing of the tribulations that the Pandavas underwent brought tears to the foremost warrior and long life brahmachari Bhishma Dev. So the point is, this world is meant to be a struggle. It's not actually meant for making trying to make a situation in which we'll be happy. Now, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't do that, but that's not the goal. Of course, if you follow the Vedic regulations of the karma kanda system, then that is your best shot at having a good material life, a progressive material life. That's your best shot. It's Krishna's system. He created it. Chato Vanyam Maya Srishtam. That's your best shot at it. But we'll be mistaken if we think that a comfortable position within this material world is the goal. Now, devotees, they're not actually interested in karma kanda, which means they're not interested in fruitive activities, which means if you're actually on the transcendental platform, then you won't even have to worry about adverse fruitive activities. Not at all. That's why Krishna says, Trigunya Vishya Veda Nistrigunya Bhavarjuna. Arjuna, you're actually meant for transcending all the karma kanda, the major portion of the Vedic literatures, which mainly deals with the modes of material nature. So that is the actual goal of human life. The so-called perfection of human life is a concoction. And Prabhupada says here that, therefore, it is said that the materialist, however materially qualified he may be, is worthless because he is hovering on the mental plane, which will drag him again to the material existence of temporary life. Of course, we know that he's paraphrasing the verse here, Yasyasti Bhaktir Bhagavat Yakinchana Savai Gunais Tatra Samasate Sura Harad Bhaktasya Kutomaha Guna Mano Ratena Sati Davato Bahi. So that Mano Ratena, the chariot of the mind, drags us here and there and everywhere within this material world. Said the material existence is lived on the mental platform. And the mental platform is accepting and rejecting. So that's a very precarious position to be in, especially if you understand karma. Because if you're just hovering on the mental plane and being dictated to your senses in your mind based on considerations that this feels good and this feels bad, then you're bound to do something stupid and have to suffer the reaction for that. Therefore, actually, the path of dharma, or in other words, karma kanda or varnashram dharma, is actually not something that's lived on the mental platform. It's actually takes some buddhi, meaning that you understand what your duty is in any given situation. And sometimes it won't feel good, meaning that it won't appeal to your mind. And so we see that in the cases of people like Ramachandra. The ideal, he knew what to do in any given situation. And sometimes the right thing to do seemed materially a very painful decision. Same with the Pandavas. It's the path of virtue is difficult to tread, difficult to tread. But Krishna consciousness and an easygoing life go ill together. So the point is, actually, this world is meant to be provocative, so we become inquisitive about another option, another choice. Because even if you execute karma kanda perfectly, which is very difficult, as examples even of King Nriga show, such a intelligent, diligent karma kandi, still there was some slight discrepancy by which in the next life he became a lizard. So it's very difficult. So ultimately that's actually not the goal. Prema pumarta mahan. The goal is prema, the prema pala is the fruit that we should all seek to taste, which Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is distributing. And the last thing I'll just say very quickly, because every yuga is difficult. Every yuga has its difficulties, but right now, Kali Yuga is arguably the most difficult of all ages. And we're currently going into a period of time that seems to be particularly very difficult. Seems that the world is falling apart in many ways. And so, in saying that, still we know that the demigods, they want to take birth in Kali Yuga. And the reason why that is that because in Kali Yuga, even though it's the most difficult of ages, and certainly very difficult to be content and satisfied with home, wife, friend, relatives, wealth, those things are very hard to acquire in such a way that you actually become happy in Kali Yuga. Despite all that, it's actually very easy comparatively to get the prema pala through the process of chanting the holy names. So that's what Shukadev Goswami explains to Parikshit Maharaj. Says that although Kali Yuga is an ocean of faults, there's still one good quality about this age, that simply by chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, one can be freed from material bondage. So forget about these adverse fruitive activities. The holy name will deal with that, and one can be promoted to the transcendental kingdom, which means to go to the kingdom of God, you have to fall in love with God, meaning that our attachment and our attraction lies in Krishna, not in the things of this world, especially if we see them separately from Krishna, which again, that's what Kunti was praying for. The conception of just being attracted to Yudhishthira, Bhima, Arjuna, Kula, and Sahadev because they are my biological relatives, not because they are pure devotees of the Supreme Lord. That material conception is the fault. So those are some thoughts on verse and purport. Grantara Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki jai, Gaura Premanandi.